This is Lloyd Center, a shopping mall in Portland, Oregon near my home, and it's permanently closing its doors. At one time, the shopping mall was the center of video game consumer culture. It was where we went to buy games, see cool stuff, hang out with friends, go to the arcade, and spend money. But there's not a lot that's happening at Lloyd Center these days. It is the post-supernova collapse, like the final days of a dying star. Lloyd Center has seen better days, but it still is a fascinating, interesting place, and there's a lot of life here. And yes, you can still buy video games. But how did we get here? In this video, I'm going to talk about the intersection of American shopping mall culture and video games, and think deeply if there's a future for either. Before the shopping mall could become the heart of video game culture, the games themselves had to find their footing. Starting in the late 1970s, shopping malls got a new tenant, the video game arcades, with Space Invaders in 1978 and Asteroids in 1979 and Pac-Man in 1980. This created a boom where for 25 cents, you could go and play the latest arcade hit. The mall arcade was different because it was family friendly. Parents could drop the kids off, say that they were going to pick them up at a later time, and for $5 worth of quarters, you could play video games all day, and it was phenomenal. The video game arcades were loud, dark, and exhilarating, a huge contrast to the brightly lit consumer spaces of the rest of the mall. There was an arcade at Columbia Center Mall where I grew up, and I loved it. Another thing that happened in the late 70s, home video game consoles. The Atari 2600 came out in 1977, and it was a huge hit. Home video games offered scaled-down recreations of arcade hits and their own games. The Atari 2600's massive success didn't just sell consoles, it birthed a whole new type of mall tenant. Places like Electronics Boutique and Babbage's set up shop in the late 70s and early 1980s, offering a curated software selection that standard department stores just couldn't touch. Then, there were the dedicated toy retailers like KB Toys and Toys R Us. Toys R Us uniquely had these long laminated game covers. You would select a paper ticket for a desired title, pay for it at the register, and then go to a separate cage-like stockroom to receive the game. It added a ceremony and anticipation to the entire buying experience. All of these stores found their natural home inside the climate-controlled shopping malls of the American shopping experience. The nostalgia of buying video games is intrinsically tied to the physical shopping mall experience. The memories of acquiring cartridges are forever linked to the environment where we found them. For many of us, the American shopping mall was a center of video game consumer trends. The ritual of going there is almost as memorable as the games themselves. Eating hot dogs at the food court or browsing for t-shirts at Hot Topic holds just as much weight in our mental real estate as getting a copy of Super Mario Bros. 3 or a Sega Genesis. These new sprawling suburban communities popping up around the country did not have a traditional, centralized main street, so shopping malls filled that void. The mall was a direct byproduct of the 1950s interstate highway system, pushing America away from urban centers and into the suburbs. Architect Victor Gruen originally envisioned these indoor spaces as utopian, pedestrian-only town squares to replace the missing Main Street. Though, in post-war America, that quickly translated into pure consumerism. Since Suburbia didn't have a downtown, malls were the center where suburban families and kids bought all their stuff. They were climate-controlled, pedestrian-only indoor environments engineered to be safe and predictable. The mall became the primary social area outside the home and school. It was a parent-approved place where you could go to get your first taste of independence and be indoctrinated into the American consumerist culture. From Fast Times at Ridgemont High all the way to Stranger Things, the shopping mall was depicted as a central part of teenage culture in movies. Lloyd Center opened on August 1st, 1960, and it is big. It is a 1.2 million square foot complex, and it was one of the largest shopping centers in the United States at the time. The parking lots are actually enclosed in multiple layers, and they are quite gigantic. I've actually gotten lost in them trying to get from one side to another, and I had to use my phone's GPS to figure how to get out. Lloyd Center is also famous for having an ice rink. Famously, Tonya Harding used to skate here on a regular basis. And they say that if you say Tonya Harding 3 times, she appears out of nowhere to whack you in your knees. But that's neither here nor there. While the American Mall was a picture of suburban stability, one of the most exciting new tenants was about to experience the cataclysmic collapse. The great video game crash of 1983 was fueled by corporate mismanagement and terrible unlicensed games, causing the industry's sales to plummet by 97%. It took out Atari competitors like Intellivision and ColecoVision entirely, and it wasn't until Nintendo and eventually Sega stepped in later on that the home video game market recovered. I remember when this happened. My friends had the Atari 2600, I had a ColecoVision, and a lot of retailers got burned with unsold merchandise that they had paid a whole lot of money for. I remember a sales clerk telling me, "Hey kid, buy all the video games you can now because they aren't going to be any more." And that was true for a very long time. We didn't stop playing video games though. The arcades still thrived and home PCs continued. But it took Nintendo and Sega working really hard to pry back open the home video game market in America. Nintendo actually took advantage of the shopping mall to create the World of Nintendo tours, with gigantic promotions right there in the middle of these commercial spaces. They knew exactly how to maximize America's fascination with the shopping mall. Nintendo's success set the stage for an unprecedented boom in the decades to come. The 1980s and 1990s were the absolute zenith for Lloyd Center. They did a massive expansion, enclosing the open plaza into a modern mall with vaulted glass ceilings, a second story full of stores, a central food court, and a multiplex cinema.
But in the center of the city, in the middle of it all, the only center in the center of the city, Lloyd Center has it all.
It was the epicenter of Portland's youth culture, and unlike other cities, you could get there via the Max Light Rail, which ran alongside it. This opened up the shopping mall to folks that lived in the city but did not own cars. The shift to 16-bit consoles led to Sega challenging Nintendo's dominance with the Sega Genesis. The world of Sega retail spaces offered gamers 16-bit gaming long before Nintendo got in on it. NEC even made a go of it with the ill-fated launch of the TurboGrafx-16. And you could buy it all at the mall. And it wasn't just video game. Not only could you buy new grunge albums on CD, but you could get your overpriced flannel at your local shopping mall. But as the 90s wore on, the cultural shifts went beyond music and fashion, extending into a technological arms race that would redefine the video game landscape. The 90s saw Sony enter the market with the PlayStation, going toe-to-toe with the Sega Saturn and the Nintendo 64. Sony picked up the cool branding that Sega had started. Video games became something cool for teenagers to spend all that teenage money on. Sony leveraged their background in high-end electronics to launch the PlayStation, establishing video games as a premium, cool commodity for teenagers. This era saw a massive consolidation of video game stores. Babbage's, Software Etc., and Funcoland all eventually merged to be transformed into GameStop that we know today. But while the dedicated mall stores were surviving, the 90s saw an explosive growth of big box stores, namely Walmart, Best Buy, and Target. These stores fundamentally challenged the mall's value proposition. I have to wonder if there's a class action lawsuit of kids that have neck problems looking up at the high-mounted video game store displays at Walmart. Through the economics of scale, they would often sell games at below market rates just to bring people into the stores. In the mid to late 1990s, Lloyd Center was thriving, but it faced significant sustained competition from the rise of these big box stores. It was around this time that people stopped driving into Portland to go to Lloyd Center, and it never was the same. And this was just the first wave of an assault on the mall's dominance. The next threats would come from across the internet. At the same time, Lloyd Center saw its classic anchors like Woolworth and JCPenney's slowly replaced or shuttered. Then came the mid-2000s and the Amazon effect. This led to waves of store closures, particularly among the mall's anchor department stores, which could no longer justify the cost to rent the large places. It fundamentally altered buyer psychology, making customers prioritize the aggressive discounts of the e-commerce retailers over the destination of the shopping mall. It was also around this time video games started to shift to digital distribution. Valve for PC gamers, followed by Xbox Live Arcade and the PlayStation Network. It began slowly cutting back the importance of physical media for video games. And then throw in the 2008 global financial crisis, and then a decade later, the COVID-19 pandemic. And you have a perfect storm. The very reason for the mall's importance and its role as a primary third place for young people was replaced by social media. The ubiquity of the smartphone meant that teenagers no longer had to go to the mall to socialize. Their lives migrated to the digital realm. This created a downward spiral that many shopping malls still have yet to pull out of. But these places have subtle and profound meaning to us. As I navigate my 40s, I find myself looking back at these retail time capsules. Engaging with retro video games serves as a way to self-regulate against the stresses of the modern world. The psychology of nostalgia shows how we process our past is directly tied to the surrounding experiences. These stories don't exist in a vacuum. For example, I could tell you exactly where I bought almost every Sega Dreamcast disc that I own. I distinctly remember going to the Kitsap Mall in Silverdale and picking up a European copy of Shenmue 2 at a store after its American release was canceled. The fact that a physical store in the mall carried it made the acquisition of the game a core memory. The environment where we browse is just as important as the games that we played. The Long Goodbye of Lloyd Center is a textbook case study of these national forces playing out. Over the decades, every single major anchor store, JCPenney's, Sears, Nordstrom, and finally Macy's, closed their door. You can track Lloyd Center's decline by the slow exodus of its anchors, culminating in Macy's leaving in 2021. This directly led to the mall's owners defaulting on a $110 million loan, throwing the entire property into foreclosure, cementing its current zombie mall status. As of right now, Lloyd Center is physically open, but largely devoid of the national retail chains that defined it. However, this period has led to a fascinating, unexpected outcome. Rock-bottom rents have allowed a vibrant ecosystem of local artists, independent boutiques, and nonprofits to flourish in the space. In a strange twist of fate, the mall's commercial death has allowed it to be reborn as a quirky, community-focused hub. Victor Gruen would be proud. The decline of traditional American malls doesn't mean an end to the physical space that they occupy. Things can be easily bought online, but you can't download community, entertainment, and social interaction. The most promising future lies in the concept of retrofitting suburbia. This involves the partial or complete demolition of the old inward-facing shopping mall structure to create a new open-aired mixed-use environment. Instead of being an isolated fortress of commerce, the property is connected with a traditional street grid with retail storefronts, residential apartments, and office spaces. This is exactly the future envisioned for Lloyd Center by its new owners. Their ambitious plan is to demolish most of the existing structure and to create a high-density mixed-use neighborhood with up to 5,000 new residents. Crucially, people freaking love Lloyd Center's skating rink. While it is highly unlikely that the actual rink will survive, they have been teasing a skating rink in the new design, but who knows? Probably not. This is where we are right now. The mall's pending closure on August 4th, 2026 looms close. It is a former shell of itself, iconic for fans of liminal space photography. We know that Lloyd Center's time is short before the star collapses and the area is reborn into something else. While high-end luxury malls in affluent areas survive, the middle-tier suburban properties are adapting out of pure desperation. All across the country, dead department stores are being hollowed out and converted into medical clinics, libraries, and massive indoor pickleball courts. I often think about filmmaker Lloyd Kaufman's dissenting opinion in the documentary The Last Blockbuster. While everyone else in the documentary waxed nostalgic about Blockbuster, he pointed out just how brutal their business practices actually were. Shopping malls were similar. They were an incredible corporate force that had a homogenizing effect on our culture, for better or for worse. Video games have slowly shifted and become less focused on physical media with each generation. People are still going to play video games, and they're still going to buy video games. But will future video game systems use physical media? Who knows? But for now, I'm going to make a conscious effort to go to Lloyd Center and enjoy it. Like visiting a family member who's getting up there in age or is facing a serious illness. You want to appreciate it while you still can, because the last days for Lloyd Center is coming all too soon. So, do you remember going to a dedicated shopping mall and buying video games? How many quarters do you think that you pumped into the local video game arcade at the mall? Let me know in the comments. So, if you like this video, please give it a like. And I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing and give this video a YouTube hype if you can. This is 8-Bit Joystick. Stay awesome. Play retro.